And we are back.
We're back, bumble bitches.
Every time I get into a Call of Duty lobby with my friends, I always just go, yo.
Yeah.
And I almost started the podcast with, yo.
Why is it so?
Just because that's trying to come in calm because I know I'm not going to leave that way. Because I suck at video games.
I was so frustrated when I left yesterday. I was like, bye, guys.
Yeah. You left and everybody was like, is she okay?
I was so mad.
I was like, she didn't like losing.
I was having a really hard day yesterday, and I'm already having a hard time playing video games and trying to enjoy that aspect of downtime.
Yeah.
And 85% of the time, it is not downtime for me. But
Too stressful.
But it's downtime for you, so I'm trying to.
Yeah. Well, you could play Faz while I play Call of Duty. We don't have to be playing the same game.
Right, but it's not the same, so.
Okay, so this is not a podcast. This is a discussion piece that Patreon will get, and then maybe we'll put it to YouTube eventually. During the live stream on Wednesday, and I sent you the TikTok I made this morning, and we had a conversation about the hanging up of the phone thing.
During an argument.
Right, during an argument. And the structure of the conversation so that everybody's on the same page, because I'm going to pull up my TikTok comments in a second, was if you are new to courting or in the early dating phases and you have an argument and the person hangs up on you, would you write them off right then and there, which was my answer, or give them another chance, which was your answer?
Well, it wasn't give them another chance. It's you can do that once.
Right.
It's a very firm boundary of this will never happen again. I understand if you're being emotional, it's not just a brush off. I want to clarify that.
But you and I don't agree on this.
Right.
I don't think that you should allow somebody to do that to you. And you were like, well, maybe they've never been, I don't know how you worded it because we were in the middle of a live stream, but you said something along the lines of maybe they've never been taught that you shouldn't behave that way. And you're going to give them an opportunity to correct that behavior because somebody did that for you and you needed that at one point in your life. I don't remember how you worded it. Can you elaborate on that?
I had to be loved properly.
I'm sorry, say that again because I was talking.
I had to be loved properly.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
So, love for me growing up was violence and screaming and yelling and breaking shit, and physical touch made me uncomfortable for a very long time. So, I've said this before. To me, if we are in an argument and you are here arguing with me, or I walk out of the room and you chase me, it's because you love me and that's how I felt loved. So me hanging up the phone would be a plea for attention.
Right. It absolutely would be.
Right, but it's a negative, manipulative way to do it.
Okay.
It took someone looking at me and saying, why do you do that? Instead of just saying, you know what, fuck you for doing that. For me to recognize, why do I do that?
Okay. So before we move any further, this is not an argument between you and I. This is not a need to understand each other. This conversation has been hashed out already. But I want to bring it up again because I brought it up to Sean in the gym this morning because I had other thoughts on it. And he also agrees with you, although he views that as very disrespectful. And then when we started talking, he's like, actually, now that I am where I am, I would not tolerate that either. And we had a whole long discussion about it. So I made the TikTok.
Right.
I then sent the TikTok to Scott. I sent it to Mike. I sent it to James Armstrong. I sent it to, I don't remember who else. I sent it to a bunch of people. And I was like, I want your guys to comment on this to let me know your thoughts on it. And it was all people I respect. Scott sent me a 3-minute voice message that he gave me permission to play on the podcast. So I'm going to turn the volume up on my phone and I'm going to play his answer to it. This is fun. Because we're getting a whole lot of other people involved
Opinions,
that aren't involved, right?
Hey, bro. Sorry, I would love to make a reply on TikTok, but I'm working, so I can't do anything more than just audio. And TikTok definitely won't let me type in what I want to type in. I actually agree with Peaches on this one, and not necessarily because of the situation where I'm in, because, I mean, obviously me and Kenya are forced to have our disagreements. on either video call or phone calls. Usually if it's getting a little more serious, we try to make it as close as possible. So we will video chat. We won't phone call. Like, we'll start off as text, and if it gets to be a little heated, then we'll either turn it into a phone call or we'll tell each other that we'll wait and do it in a video call. But in the beginning, we would hang up on each other when things got too serious because we didn't know how to handle it. And that's the kicker, is until you actually put yourself into that situation, you don't have anybody helping you learn the way to handle these situations. So you just go to your default, natural, I can't handle this, I'm just going to stop it right now. In reality, you don't want to judge somebody based on experiences that they haven't experienced yet. You want to judge somebody based on how they are willing to fix where they lack by giving them that second chance. And if they can prove that they actually want to change, if they wanted to, they will. Well, then you can really see their character and if they're worth investing in or not. If they're not willing to change that about themselves, then they're not worth it. So by not giving them that chance, you're really not giving yourself the opportunity to see if that person has potential or not. Because most of us haven't experienced certain aspects of relationships to have put ourselves into those positions to know how to handle them. A lot of people go through relationships where there's no fighting at all because they're just not as, you're just too similar in a lot of ways, and your values are, not even brought to the table because you're more with somebody for their interests and how you relate to them than you are your underlying values, until you actually get to a point when you have to disagree on your underlying values or morality. That's when things really get heated. And, real relationships bring those to the table, whereas these simple relationships where nobody argues, usually that doesn't happen. So, I think it is good to allow somebody to show potential in themselves, to really prove if they are willing to do what it takes to make it work with you, if you are worth it to them, if they want to change or not. By not giving them that chance and just kind of writing them off, you could actually be missing out on a good opportunity yourself.
Okay, so I agree with that. Mm-hmm. And I love Scott.
Yeah.
So his point is very similar to the one that you made during the podcast, the live stream, and to the one that you just made now. And though I agree with both of your standpoints on that, I still think that I would disregard and just, that's the end of it.
Right. They're grown and they should know better.
Right.
I get that mindset. Like, right. I get where you're coming from.
Right. And I want to preface this entire conversation by this is early courting phase.
Yeah.
Early relationship, not living together, not married.
Right.
Right.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. It could also be a massive signifier of other problematic behavior. And I don't want to deal with that.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get into a whole bunch of that. I have so much that I want to talk about in this. I want to read some of the other comments that I screenshotted some, and the video's got like 900 comments on it or something stupid already. So it's probably not really that many. That was probably a very vast exaggeration. Let's see. It's probably
a manifestation.
It's probably less than 400. Let me refresh and look.
83.
Yeah. 272. 272 is the comment.
I was like 700. You weren't
so
off.
I was way the fuck off. There's a lot there. So Zach from Uncaged was the other one that I sent, who also has my fucking massive respect for that guy. Where's my pictures? Okay. So before I do that, Wakenya replied to the comments.
Perfect.
So Scott was the gentleman that I was just playing. His wife replied in the comments. Mm-hmm. She said, as someone who has done this, if my boundary of example raising voice isn't honored, I will hang up. And we can talk when you're ready to calmly converse. I always answer when I'm called back. However, if someone hanging up is their tactic to avoid conflict or deal with it, it's another thing. Mm-hmm. That's a very valid comment.
That is a very valid comment, because I agree with that. If you know my boundary is to not shout at me, and that's what you're doing on the phone, I am 100% hanging up. I'm not going to try to raise my voice to match you. I'm not going to try to calm you down.
Are you just hanging up, though, or are you going to preface it with, if you're going to talk to me that way, I'm hanging up?
It depends on how frequent it has happened. Oh, man, now that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, so that's how I would handle all of that.
Yeah.
In the event, so first of all, we're not having an argument over the fucking telephone.
Oh, no, never.
His situation, because they're both long distance,
Yeah.
they have no choice but to FaceTime. But at least in FaceTime, you can see how
Body
animated
language.
someone is getting, right? Like that's healthy. It's the most you can fucking do long distance.
Right.
If you and I are having a bad day, we're not arguing over the phone. If I start to get heated or you start to get heated, somebody is going, hey, this is now past phone conversation or text conversation. I will see you when you get home. We can have a conversation, right? I would never just hang the phone up. If I'm hanging the phone up on you and that's the abrupt ending, we're fucking done. I've got nothing else to say to you ever as far as I'm concerned. If you're screaming at me or you're being disrespectful or we just can't come to an agreement, I'm going to preface before hanging up with that. And I would even go as far as to be like, this is not conducive to resolution. I love you. I'm going to let you go. I'll see you when I get home. And then I'm going to end the call. And if you want to keep screaming at that point, I've already given
Right.
we have to stop. This is me telling you we need to pause. And if you were to do that to me and then hang the phone up, I would be okay with that. Right? Because at that point, I'm just angry and I'm salty that you fucking use my own line against me. Right? So that would be, I think that's a very healthy way to end that call.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's what I would do.
The amount of times I would hear my mom, my real mom, when she was drunk and arguing with her boyfriend over the phone when I was a kid, she would always be like, if you want to continue yelling at me, and she'd be calm as fuck. I'm going to do this. And she would just hang the phone up. And then the phone rings, she'd pick it up and she'd go, hello. And then she'd just put it right back down. And that was her game. Because she would get them riled up and start screaming. And then when they started screaming at each other and she didn't want to deal with it, she would just hang up on them. And that constant, I would watch her pick up the phone and set it down even. Like not even saying hello. Like real childish shit.
Oh my gosh.
But how calm she was when she would be like, if you're going to continue to talk to me like that, I'm not going to talk to you. Stuck with me. Because I'm not going to allow somebody to be like that towards me, especially over a phone call. So I would give the we're not going to do this. I think that that's very fair and very different than just straight hanging the phone up if somebody's talking.
Yeah, it gives them that opportunity
To correct their behavior.
just like the way that you do that one time.
Yeah. Okay, so in the original discussion, we did not have that
No.
because we were speaking solely on somebody hanging up the phone. That part of the conversation didn't even come up.
Yeah, it's a different perspective.
Right. So in that scenario, I absolutely agree that it is okay to give somebody an opportunity to correct their behavior before hanging up on them.
Okay.
I think that that's different than allowing them to hang the phone up and then calling them back, like you said earlier, or waiting for them to call you back calm because there's a clear disrespect there.
I didn't say that.
I know. Well, we're talking about two different scenarios. You said that in the event that somebody hung up on you during the live stream, that you would allow them to talk to you again, and you would be like, hey, that's not how we conduct ourselves. This is the only time you will ever hang up on me.
Oh, but it's not a phone call.
Okay, so then how would that work?
That would have to be an in-person conversation. Like you're getting home from work, and that's the first thing we're talking about when you get into the door.
Okay.
I'm not having any more communication over the phone. You ended that conversation with aggression. I'm good.
Okay, so then how does that work if you're not living together? Because that's the discussion we're having.
Of not living together?
Yeah.
So in this instance, I don't know. I just wanted to clarify my original statement.
Okay, so then I'm asking you now then, if we're not living together, how does that work? Because this is supposed to be courting, early dating phase, not living together. Because if you're living together and you've got somebody that's hanging up on you, you guys are already past the point of this. Because this behavior is now well established in the relationship, I believe.
Okay, so this is the first time it happens. I get hung up on. My knee-jerk reaction would be to block them on everything. That's what toxic me would do. And then when I am ready to have you talk to me, then I'll unblock your number and then you'll have the grace to be in my presence. Me now, there would be a text message if I need time to process what just happened. I'm going to go do not disturb. You're not going to hear from me for a little bit. Because that would be me controlling my rage. Because I agree, it's a very disrespectful thing. And past me would have 100% been like, you know what, fuck you. You hung up on me, that's the end of it. But me personally, I want to be a beacon of nurturing and grace to humankind. And now it's kind of becoming toxic to the other end of it because I give people too much grace. So I would go no contact. I'm not going to talk to you for a little bit while I'm processing. And then it would be, we're not going to have any more conversations until we see each other next. When are you free? Because I'm not going to sit here and joke around with you and, how was your day? LOL, that was so wild that we had that crazy argument. That's not happening. We are not okay right now. That was not okay behavior. As I would say to the children, inappropriate.
Right. I would like to point out that Scott and Wakenya both had a whole lot of healing that they had to do in the beginning phases of their relationship, which explains that behavior. It explains the inability for them to properly communicate the way that they do now. So again, in that scenario, I agree with you guys that there should be some sort of grace.
Right.
I think that my grace ends with, I'm not going to allow you to talk to me like this. If you would like to have a civil conversation, I will talk to you. But otherwise, I'm going to hang the phone up and we can talk when you're calm.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm not hanging up on you. I gave you warning. Like this is a clear indication of I'm not going to accept this behavior from anybody. Right? Okay. So I guess we're in agreement on all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. And,
sorry.
And you would in a not living together situation would be the one to initiate the text message right after the hang up. I need time to process this. This is me repeating back to you what you said. Make sure I understand. I need time to process what you just said or what just happened.
Right.
I'm going on do not disturb. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike.
And then once I resurface, it would be we're not going to have further communication until we speak in person.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to go back to joking and being goofy and all of that after you blatantly disrespected me.
Okay.
And there was something else that I wanted to say. What do you have to say?
Would you initiate that visitation?
I would.
I would like to speak to you in person. Can we go to dinner or?
Yeah. When are you free?
Okay. So you are looking to essentially correct the behavior of an adult.
I'm looking to parent this adult. That's exactly what I'm doing. I am looking to understand the behavior and correct it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm willing to be that human being. If I see that somebody is willing to put the work in on their end, if somebody points a mistake out to me, I'm gonna be a little salty about it. And I'm gonna try to hide most of that hurt, but my face tends to not lie for me. And I would accept the criticism or the correction. I would internalize it. And I've become really good about, I'm a human and I make mistakes and that's okay. And I want to be a human who learns from those mistakes and is able to pass on that wisdom. If I see that in somebody else, there's going to be that lash out of hurt, whatever. And if they're able to come back upon reflection and show in their actions that they want to change that behavior and not be that person anymore to be perceived that way, I'm willing to put some nurturing into that. Did all that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to hold off on reading the comments because now I have a whole lot of other shit I want to say.
Okay.
And I guess because the conversation's going, we should not interrupt it with comments just to come back to this later. You said on the podcast numerous times that you had a realization that I'm not going to tolerate your toxic behavior, and you had to put all that shit away when we started dating.
Correct.
If you had to do that and you were somebody that did that toxic bullshit, knowing that I was not willing to tolerate that, how is that any different than anybody else being in a relationship? Would that speak on how much you value the other person or how much you assess the other person values themselves? How would I word that? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. To me, it makes sense. I would say that's a part of it. The potential that I saw in you and I saw in us, which, by the way, we are beyond what I ever imagined us to be.
Because we don't do that shit to each other.
Right, we don't.
Okay.
We don't. And it's been a lot of really hard, conscious effort on my end to not be a piece of shit.
Mine too. Mine too.
I want to get defensive so bad, and I'm going to start crying.
That defensive shit is real.
Oh, it's so hard.
That's our ego.
I think it is. You're right, because there's a wounded child in me who is always told that they were wrong or you're lying. And I feel the need to defend me. Like, I'm not fucking wrong. Sometimes I am.
Yeah.
I diverged. I agree with what you said. The value in you was a contributing factor to me realizing that I'm problematic. Because you were and are and will continue to evolve into a caliber of man that I have never experienced. And recognizing that your behavior is problematic is becoming like self-aware. And I know that sounds stupid because
It doesn't.
I had like I had a mental breakdown over realizing that I was not the quality of woman I thought you deserved.
If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
And all of my relationships had always fallen apart.
Right. And the caliber of man that you were picking
Right.
were the type of men who would tolerate that shit.
Correct. Or enable it because they needed it.
Right. That's two toxic behaviors feeding off of each other for a totally dysfunctional relationship.
Right.
That's going to be misery.
It was.
And then the breakup is going to be even worse because you have two unstable people that don't know how to emotionally regulate or communicate.
And now my abandonment's kicking in.
Right.
That's when that fighting would come into play, and I'm hanging up on the phone because if you call me back and you rush home from work and you're willing to lose your job, you love me.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm glad I'm not that person anymore.
I'm glad you were never that person towards me because even though we're having this conversation, as of right now, I still stand by what I said.
Yeah.
I there's nothing so far that's convinced me otherwise. I am holding fast in. If somebody hung the phone up on me while we were in the middle of a heated discussion, I am writing you the fuck out of my life.
Right.
And I have my reason for it, but I want to see if any of this changes or anything that you say changes my mind.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see if something changes my mind.
And then I'm going to explain why at the end.
Okay.
My good friend Mike from Force of Focus said, hang up on someone, especially in beginning stages, the building blocks of a relationship of any sort shows that they either lack the ability to communicate back and forth instead of talking at you.
Pause.
That was it. I don't know where the second comment is. You want me to read it again?
They have the ability.
They lack the ability.
They lack the ability.
To communicate back and forth instead of talking at you. He's basically just saying that they lack the ability to communicate if they're...
So the emotional maturity.
Right.
Okay.
Which is kind of where I am.
Makes sense.
Steven.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll be on the next episode. He'll be on episode 3. His story will be episode 3 of The Voice of the Broken. Said, nope, that's super disrespectful. If you can't argue with me and have a talk with me, then I don't want you in my life. He's very, very brash about it.
Okay. So he's even willing to argue if it comes down to it, but we're still going to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, he's fine with an argument as long as because
as long as it happens.
Some people view an argument as open communication because at least at that point you're trying. You might be taking sides and attacking, but you are at least attempting to resolve.
Right.
Poorly with an argument or a fight, but you are attempting resolution at that point.
Right. It's just not a shutdown.
I can respect that even more than hanging up on somebody.
Me too.
Okay.
I agree with that.
James Armstrong, who I've talked about on the podcast before, who is the Rev Tattooer on TikTok, said, I wouldn't call back. I'd wait for them to call me. And when they do, expect an excuse as to why they can't behave like an adult. I honestly don't know if I would continue to date them.
See, this is where my petty ass would come in. They would call me back and I would send them straight to voicemail because I sent you that text message.
Okay, well, that makes sense because you've already explained to them that you're not doing that.
Yeah. Boop.
He was typing something else, I'm assuming, because it said I already, and then I didn't find his second comment.
Okay.
Homestead Sass on TikTok said, it would be one and done discussion. This is a boundary for me, and if it happens again, we will not move forward. If they can't respect that, then the relationship will go nowhere. So she's like you are. We'll give you that opportunity.
Everyone, by the way, Homestead Sass is my friend, Tasha. She's the one who makes my eyeglasses chains. I'm not wearing them right now because they broke and she's supposed to fix them this weekend. But if you like how beautiful and dangly and boppy they are, check her out. TikTok and Etsy, Homestead Sass.
Yeah. Zach Williams, who is Uncaged Crew on TikTok, said, I would 100% allow them to explain themselves whenever they came back around. Right? Whenever they came back around.
Okay.
That tells me that he's not trying to have the phone conversation either. Like you, it's got to be face to face. Because there are 3 sides to every story. However, if it was legitimately a hang up, that's it. I was going to use the disrespect because that's what it is. They were intentionally trying to get under your skin. That's not a
Sorry, thank you.
That's not a characteristic I want to be around. It's toxic, and I won't allow that behavior around me, period. So he aligned with you in the beginning, and his second comment was mine. I'm going to pull up the comments and just kind of briefly scroll through.
Okay, so I want to piggyback off of that. I
Okay.
agree with what he said. If I am having that conversation with that person and I ask, why did you hang up on me? And they lay out whatever they lay out, and it's very emotionally immature. And I say, you recognize that that's childish, and that's something that I'm not going to tolerate. And they can respond with, damn, that fucking hurt. Now I have to process, and I will give them space to process. I would accept that response. I would accept the response of, damn, okay. And then we can have a conversation, and I would accept that. If they started hitting me with excuses of, I hung up on you while you made me mad, I didn't do anything. You chose to hang up on me. You can really tell that I'm getting into that ad-literium because you chose,
Right.
You deemed it to be the best course of action in that moment, not recognizing the fallout that would happen afterwards. So there's an emotional immaturity here. There is also a lack of long-term sight, long-term thinking.
Right, which is going to actually tie into my why.
Yeah.
Chris Dennison, I wish it said his actual TikTok name. It doesn't. It just says his name on here. Said, no, there wouldn't be another conversation. No other words needed. You've shown me how the future arguments will go. Somebody, I'm not going to try to even pronounce her name. She said, do you think BPD has a play in that? As borderline, I would react similarly to you, meaning me on a hard day, but on a good day, I would react like Peaches. You have borderline also.
I do.
I don't think that this has anything to do with borderline. I think this comes down to emotional maturity
And self-growth.
and understanding. When was the last time you guys did an appraisal of you?
Right. When were you self-aware?
Right. You know, if you want to sell your house, you have to have your house appraised. Sometimes you need to do a self-appraisal and understand where your value is. And if your value is at $1 million, you're not gonna tolerate $10,000 behavior, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Kane_man667 said, I would wait till they call back. And if they don't, then I would wait until they reach out to me. If we live together, I'd wait till they got home and continue the conversation if they were ready to do so. If we didn't live together, I'd probably wait until the next day and try to resolve that issue. Then, if all else fails, they're now a ghost to me. I think that's also a fair statement.
Yes. I want to add on to that. If we're living together, it's also not going to be swept under the rug. If you tell me you're not ready to talk about it, okay, word, then we're not really having any conversations.
Right.
What do you want for dinner?
Civil.
Right.
Okay. We're still living.
Yeah. Can I get you anything while I'm up?
Right. That's very different than fuck you energy.
Right.
And it's important to ascertain the difference.
It is. I would still very much shut down, babe. Like I'm not trying to have philosophical conversations
Right.
with you right now. I'm still very upset.
Yeah.
I would like to continue the conversation we were having when you hung up with me on me.
Right. I also think that's fair.
Right.
Because you need resolution.
Right.
I would want to add to that. If you allow that behavior to go unchecked, and this is going to come into later conversations, if you allow that behavior to go unchecked and things start to go back to playful and normal, that behavior is now excused behavior.
Correct.
And you are allowing them to treat you that way. You are training them that they can behave in that manner, become goofy and playful, and that behavior is now forgiven. That you're training them that essentially.
Yes. Emotional moochers.
Right.
This is kind of like a side branch. So you said $1 million appraisal. You're not going to accept $10,000 behavior, right? I would accept pennies from like 1920 and before.
Why?
Because of history.
Okay. Gas Frost said, for me, it depends. I don't like arguing over the phone, so I would prefer to de-escalate the situation in order to calmly talk about it later. Otherwise, I hang up and they're cut off. So
I'm sorry, repeat that.
For me, it depends. I don't like arguing over the phone.
Okay.
So I would prefer to de-escalate the situation.
De-escalate.
Okay. In order to calmly talk about it later.
Okay.
Otherwise, I hang up and they're cut off. So she's willing to be the one that hangs up the phone if they're not able to de-escalate. Because I think that's one of those things like, look, I don't want you to talk to me like that. And if you keep doing it, click.
Okay.
So I think that's kind of like what I was getting at earlier.
Yeah, that sounds akin. The reason I was confused was because it sounded like if they're not able to de-escalate her when she's upset, then she can hang up. Like, do as I say, but not as I do.
Yeah.
Thank you for rereading that.
Rachel Cara said, in this day and age, I would text them and ask if they meant to hang up on me or if they lost service and leave it at that. If it takes them a while to respond to me, like more than an hour, the lack of response leads me to believe I had been hung up on. Once we can reapproach, I would explain to them that I will not accept that behavior. If it happens again, done. I'm not going to try to say this name, but they wrote, no, it's an immediate red flag and take that as a bullet dodge. Not the one said, you hang up on me, I'm done. Let me see if I can find another one that's got like a 2-comment answer. That one says 1 of 2, but there's no 2.
You know what I would love to do while you're scrolling? Hold a seminar where we pose 5 questions to 10 different people, and we're included in this panel. And we're given 2 minutes to give an answer and elaborate on the life experience connected to that answer and why we have that perspective.
Right.
I think that would be an amazing seminar to do. People, if we wanted to make it an event, sell tickets.
Yeah, well, I mean, in that scenario, what you're doing is you're basically forcing the people that are going to be on that panel to understand that everybody has a different cognitive bias.
Right.
And I think that in people seeing that, this is kind of like the Jubilee conversations, the debates. Mm-hmm. But in doing this, you are allowing people to realize that your lived experience is very different than others.
Right.
You know what the eye-opening moment for me and all of that was?
What?
Talking to Luke Forsythe on that really fucked up interview we did.
Oh my gosh.
Because his perspective of that caravan that was traveling from Venezuela to the U.S. when Trump was in office was a very different conversation than what the media had portrayed. Mm-hmm. And like he got to be on the ground and he got to experience a whole lot of that. And me getting his perspective changed my view on immigration in general.
Oh, my worldview changed.
Right.
From our interview with him.
But that came from just listening to his perspective of things. It gave me a new outlook because I've never experienced any of that. We've only been given what we've given or been given
via media.
Right. Yep. All right. I'm going to read this one as the last one. This one's from Ginger Snaps. It says, it's similar to the moment where you have to walk away if you're in an argument in person. Have enough respect for your partner to tell them you need to walk away or get off the phone to recompose. Even in the dating phase, that's a hard boundary for myself. No matter the phase in the relationship, there needs to be a level of respect that should be maintained. Learned it from y'all. Love that.
Love that. That's a name that I recognize.
Yeah,
Ginger Snaps.
It just happened to be the last one that I was scrolling and found 2 comments. Oh, this one's got 3 comments. This is all the same person. Okay, it's a long one too. I'm gonna read this one too, just because it's 3. This is from Tink with a kissy thing. My husband feels it's disrespectful. I understand that, however, I may hang up if my emotions are out of control and I can't handle the conversation.
Okay, pause. I need to process that.
Right?
I need to process that. So it's expected of. So I'm just asking a question. I'm not attacking. I'm genuinely curious. So it's expected of your husband to tolerate your behavior because you're emotional.
Pretty much. I may hang up if my emotions are out of control and can't handle the conversation.
Is there an elaboration on is she trying to work on that or?
She wrote, we've discussed this and save serious conversations for in-person. Over the phone disagreements are a no-go for us, as I get extremely emotional and he can get very cold. This doesn't work for our relationship, so serious conversations are for in-person only. Most people hate the phrase, we need to talk. However, that is our way of saying that something serious needs to be discussed. It gets both parties full attention and allows us to understand what we need. That works for y'all. I'm not heart react guy. Like, you guys got your shit together. However, you are emotionally, you are not emotionally regulated.
I was going to say stunted a little bit.
If you can't control your emotions and feel the need to hang up on your person, the only difference is you can't hang up on them in person.
Right.
But if you can be like, look, I can't do this right now. Like, I'm really in the middle of something, or like, I would much rather have this conversation with you in person and then hang the phone. It's a different conversation. Saying I need to walk away for a minute is a different conversation than just leaving.
Right, it is. You know what that sounds like to me? A child going unchecked. Like, you're not here to correct my behavior, so I can do it and get away with it.
Okay, I'm glad that you said that.
Why is that?
because that's part of my reason why I feel the way I feel.
Okay. Oh, you're right. Holy shit.
If you and I were in an argument here and you
Okay.
stormed out the door without saying anything,
Yeah.
just left,
Right.
not fuck you, not anything, just walked out the door while we were having an important life-altering conversation or we're trying to resolve conflict, I'm taking that as you're leaving.
Oh, that's exactly how I would take that if you did that to me. You're leaving me.
Right. And that could be BBD abandonment. It could be let's say that it could be, right? Realistically, I know me, and in that moment I would feel like you're abandoning me, that like you just don't want to do this anymore, you're out the door.
Right.
I also know that the rage would take over at that point, and the feeling of sadness would go away because I would be using that tool of anger to fucking mask and process what just happened, and I would probably start packing your shit or expecting you to be packing mine, right? Like if
Right.
one of us did that to each other, I would expect that.
You would probably come home to me laying in bed crying.
I gotta be honest, if I did that, I don't know if I could come home. If I left in the middle of a conversation without saying a word to you, like if you were just, and I was like, fuck it, and left, I don't know if I could come home. I don't know if I would be able to come back here and show my face after my behavior like that. We would have to talk on the phone first or a text message. Something would have to happen before I would even be willing to step back in the house, because I expect more of me than that behavior, right? Like there would be a whole lot of pride I'd have to swallow before walking back through that door.
Right.
If I was to, however, look at you while you were fucking screaming or yelling, which again, we've never even done that to each other. But if that was the case and I tried to check you and it didn't go unchecked and you continued and I was like, look, I can't do this. I'm starting to really lose my temper. I need to step away for a minute. I'm going to go for a walk. And I left. That's a very different conversation than you screaming at me going, fuck it, and walking out the door. Okay. So now you can view the hanging up the phone as the same way as just walking out in the middle of a conversation. Most people would not tolerate somebody leaving while they were having a big conversation with nothing.
Because it's expected to, when you leave, you say something.
Right.
Damn.
Okay. So here's my thought on all of this.
Okay.
I do not want to allow emotionally unregulated people in my circle.
Right.
It is not my job to raise adults.
Right.
I'm 40 years old, 43 years. I'll be 44 this year. I do not have anyone in my life that has blowups like that. If you cannot emotionally regulate, I can't have you near me, because your disruptions and your drama is going to affect not only my borderline, but it's going to affect my mental health and other aspects. If I have to stop dealing with business or stop dealing with my wife and children because somebody's having a fucking blow up that I have to now go and parent and try to counsel or whatever, it's disrupting my life.
Okay, so are we saying this outside of the dating and courting phase now?
I'm saying in general.
Okay, well, I agree with all of that.
Overall.
Yeah,
So-
I would not tolerate that overall.
Okay, so then let's put it from because you're right. You are right. And we said dating, courting, dating phase. If I have to deal with that from somebody that I'm learning to get to know, it takes away from my business. It takes away from my workout. It takes away from my best friend time. It takes away from my video game time or dirt bike riding or whatever it is that I do to decompress. And it's bringing a whole lot of bullshit into my life that I otherwise would not have to deal with.
Okay.
And it's telling me that I'm dealing with somebody who is an emotionally unregulated, that cannot control their thought process or their actions. And I am making a decision to allow them to be in my life. And in the event that I go back and be like, hey, you can't do that to me, and they don't ever do that again, but they find another way to be disrespectful because that's who they are at their core.
Right.
I am now allowing that behavior to be in my life. I am not going to disrupt my peace for anyone.
Right.
You are going to be held to a standard to be around me. And if you can't meet that standard, I don't want you here. And if I'm around other people that are at a standard and I can't control myself to be around them, they need to tell me to fuck off. Like I expect that. I have the mentors in my life that I have and the people around me because of the character that I have. And I am emotionally regulated and I'm not freaking out. And I'm not vindictive. And like, I am calm with my conversations with the people that I care about. I am going to conduct myself in a manner that is becoming of a gentleman. I expect a woman that I am courting or dating to conduct herself like a fucking lady. And if you are freaking the fuck out, being overly emotional, and you said earlier that you used to fuck, I don't remember what you said. I wrote it down, but I don't care to look. Something about walking away and expecting me to chase you.
Oh yeah, I would. I would expect the person I was with to chase after me. Yeah,
I wouldn't do that either.
I know.
In any event that somebody did that to me and they walked away, you keep walking. Keep walking, because I have a path that I'm on that I'm trying to get to. And all of that is going to do is disrupt my path to get where I'm trying to go. And that might sound narcissistic and selfish, but I know my worth. And I want people who are going to make me better around me. And it doesn't have to be a lot better, because it could be my duty to make that person that's doing that better. But they're not ready for that yet. This comes into the ego conversation that when a student is ready, the teacher will appear. I'm not going to be the teacher for somebody that's that far down the rung. I'm not mentoring those type of people. I don't want that type of chaos anywhere around anything that I care about. If that was a conversation where instead of just hanging up the phone, they started screaming, like screaming, I would take that differently than hanging the phone up, because at least at that point, they are still trying to have the conversation. And I could be like, hey, I'm going to call you back in like 20 minutes. You're a little overworked right now. I want to continue this conversation, but I'm not going to allow you to scream at me like that. It's disrespectful. So regain your composure and we'll pick this back up when we're both calm. I'll call you back in 20, 30 minutes. I'll see you when I get home. I think that's fair, because that's me letting them know that this is unacceptable behavior. I'm not going to tolerate it. And then in person, we can have a different conversation and see where that goes. But I think that's a different level than just hanging up the phone or walking out the door in the middle of conflict. So at what point is it my responsibility to father or mentor, parent is the word Sean used, a full-grown adult? Because in the scenario where you and Wakenya and Scott all agree that you should give the opportunity to correct the behavior, why is that my responsibility?
It's not. It's not your responsibility. That's one of those side quests that you can decide to take on or not.
Do you think that means I lack empathy, or that you're more empathetic than I am, or compassionate than I am?
No.
Why? That's our second patron, by the way.
Patron.
Why does that not show that I lack empathy or compassion, or that you are maybe you're more empathetic or compassionate than I am? Does it even speak on those things? And if so, yes or no, why?
I'm going to say no, because when it comes down to my boundaries, it doesn't matter if I'm empathetic with you or not.
Okay. Why?
Because I'm selfish. That's what it boils down to. When it comes to my boundaries and my peace, I am not willing to sacrifice me in the hopes that somebody else is going to get their shit together.
Right. Well, that's my argument.
Right.
But you're willing to do a forgiveness that I'm not willing to do.
Right.
So if that's not empathy or compassion, what is that? There's got to be something in you, Scott and Wakenya, and everybody else that agreed with you that feels that way, where I don't. And I don't understand why that is. Does that mean that I'm cold? Does that mean that
I would say calloused.
Okay, well, that's fair, because callous has come from hard work.
Right.
Callous has come from getting your fucking hands dirty and doing hard things to get to where you want to be. It's no different than building muscle or dieting. It comes from, it's growth.
Right.
So it makes the hard calloused hands. And if that makes me calloused, that's from lived experience.
That's from being burned too many times.
So does that mean that I lack compassion? Or does that mean that I'm just not willing to accept less than from people?
I would say that your compassion is redirected towards yourself.
Ooh, that's good. Why?
Because you've given so much in the past that you recognize that when you bleed too much that you will die. So redirecting that compassion back towards you, I would say, increases the compassion that you're willing to have towards others, because the more that you're willing to love yourself, the more you're willing to love others. The more you can pour out towards others.
Okay, but in me not giving that second chance, I'm not pouring back out. Or maybe I am, but to the people who deserve it more.
Well, you said that when the student's ready, the teacher appears.
Right. Well, I don't think that those people are ready to be taught.
Right. So
maybe I'm just not their teacher. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what I got when you said that? When I was like, ooh, that's good. I thought, I'm not responsible for them. I can't control them. I can control me. So I can control what I allow others to bring into my life. Tupac said, just because I don't want you at my table doesn't mean that you, oh wait, how did he say it? He said that just because you've lost me as a friend does not mean that you've gained me as an enemy. Just because I don't want you at my table doesn't mean that I don't want you to eat. You just can't eat here. And that's how I view that situation. When people do that, you can absolutely be that person. You just can't be that person near me.
Right.
At one point, I would get caught up in all that. And I would allow that kind of drama and that kind of nonsense to shape the relationships that I have with people. And the more toxic someone was, the more toxic I was to them. And that matched energy made me a horrible person, because you cultivate your circle like that, and you're living in that toxic wasteland of soil. You go around other people and you try to bring that behavior, you're not going to be able to establish connections with people who are living in proper fertilized soil. They're living really good, and you got this bullshit over here, and you see how bright and shiny and good that is over there, and you're never going to make it because you're stuck in this mindset.
Right.
There's a whole lot of work that would have to get somebody out of that toxic situation and into a healthy one. And even though you're in a healthy situation, you still have to get past all of that bullshit that was still in you. I really don't think that this is a matter of compassion or empathy. I did want to pose the question, because I do think that there are people out there who will believe that is a compassion thing. I am a compassionate person, but I will protect my peace at all costs. And if that means that I have to write people out of my life, regardless of who they are, to do that, I'm going to. But I'm also not above helping people, right? Like, I can do a whole lot for people and never get any type of praise, and like, I'm fine with that. So it's not that I lack empathy or compassion. You're right. It does come down to making sure that I'm not bleeding out. I still stand by what I said.
Okay. I still stand by what I said.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I can't speak. Well, I'm going to speak for you.
Okay. I don't care.
I think it's, like I said, I think it's because you've been burned too many times. And at this point, you're trying to keep the blood in your body versus donating to others. You've recognized, I'm not going to continue that thought because that thought doesn't make sense. I'm going to end me speaking for you because now I have too much going on in my brain. I don't know what it is in me. I just feel like a duty to be a mother to the masses. And I don't mean like the masses on our platform. I mean
The people in your life.
Yeah. So I didn't have that kind of grace. And I grew up without a dad. And I view every adult first and foremost as an adult. And then secondly, I try to see them as their inner child.
Okay.
And what?
Do you think this speaks to the divine feminine in you?
Maybe.
Right? Does this speak to feminine and masculine energy?
Probably. I see the inner child in you all the time, especially when you get frustrated.
Do you?
I do, yeah.
You have to elaborate on that now.
I can just picture like little 8-year-old you getting pissed off at your Nintendo.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Nintendo.
It sounds like me when I play Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or when you're happy and excited and when you're looking at me super lovingly on the couch calling me Sleeping Beauty. Yeah.
Stop it. Do you you are my Sleeping Beauty. You pregame sleep on me every night. And then you actually fall asleep on me every night.
I do.
So then you do think that it speaks to a masculine and feminine energy?
I think that could definitely be a topic of discussion, yeah.
Okay.
I do think that women are more inherently empathetic, nurturing, caring, want to heal the wounded.
Okay. So then do you think that this is why good women get taken advantage of by shitty men so easily?
Yes.
And do you think, would you also say that this is why toxic women end up with beta males? Because that's bitch behavior. And I don't mean bitch as in feminine. I mean like that's weakness.
Yeah.
If we're talking feminine and masculine.
What was the question?
Do you think that that's why women who are toxic like that get beta males?
Because they behave that way?
Yeah, because the women...
Or they lack the nurturing.
Because the women are acting that way. A good quality man is not going to tolerate. You said it. You stopped that bullshit because you knew that I would not tolerate any of it.
Right.
I'm not going to say that I'm alpha male, But I'm definitely not a beta.
No.
And I know my value.
Yeah.
So you had to stop that toxic behavior to be with a man who views themselves the way that I view me.
Yeah.
And when you were not that way, you were getting beta males. You were getting men who don't conduct themselves like a man.
And I mean, thank God that you were and are a man who was busy, because a lot of our communication was through text messaging until 10 o'clock at night,
Sometimes
11 o'clock at night. And then we would hang out for an hour or two. So that allowed me to check my shit without you seeing it.
Okay.
Previous people that I was with, we were together 24/7 all the time. Couldn't fucking breathe without each other. So whenever my borderline would rear its head and it was unchecked at the time, they would experience all of it. And it would be tolerated because she's just crazy in this moment.
So then what do you say to the borderline comment that I read earlier? Because she said on a bad day, she would still hang up on somebody, and on a good day, she'd forgive them. Or on a bad day, she would write them off, and on a good day, she'd forgive them.
What about it?
Well, that's not a borderline trait. I mean,
no, it's not.
I think that's a healed or versus not healed, right? Like,
yeah, no. When my borderline was unchecked, I was just chaos.
Well, you still have bad days.
I do still have bad days, but now I'm emotionally regulated.
Okay.
I agree. It speaks to healed and not healed. I was not healed then, and my borderline was unchecked, and I was just a tsunami of a person.
I really think that if you allow that behavior to go unchecked, or you accept that behavior in your life, that it is more likely to morph into something unhealthy
Yes.
than it is to morph into something healthy. However, because of what Kenya and Scott, I know that it is possible for people to do the work on themselves to grow past that point together.
If they want it.
Right. But they're both very intelligent people. Like, they're both fucking smart as shit. Scott makes me feel dumb as shit sometimes when I talk to him.
Yeah.
So for that to be the case, they had a whole, but this speaks exactly into the not bringing baggage into your relationship. Sometimes that you don't take the time in between to like take the time away and not be in a relationship for that to be a thing.
And there's always new hurt at the end of a relationship.
Yeah.
If people aren't healing after a relationship, if you're just collecting suitcases, by the time you're in your 6th relationship, you have 15 suitcases.
What do you mean by new hurt?
New hurt, new betrayals.
Okay.
New,
Right.
new,
All that old shit plus.
right. Plus.
Okay. I get that.
Fuck Craig. Now it's fuck Craig and Steve. Now fuck Craig, Steve, and Joseph.
Right.
All of them are the problem. And this is what they did to me. They're all narcissistic and assholes.
Right.
And
Couldn't
I couldn't be
possibly
my
be.
own person.
Right.
But it was all different forms of controlling, right? Craig wouldn't let her add dudes on Snapchat. But with Joseph, she couldn't go out to the bar on Friday nights. New hurt.
How much do you think this changes with age? And do you think that would speak to my callousness
I think...
or maturity? How about maturity?
Oh, gosh. So maturity to me looks like a scale, right?
Okay.
Infinity positive and then infinity negative. And it's a moving scale, right? If we have somebody who is manipulative, vindictive, cries to get out of getting in trouble, will do things that they know will be problematic, but when it gets brought up, well, you did this, so I just did this in retaliation, you're the problem here. They have matured, but into the negative. And somebody who is very capable at manipulating people and getting their way and getting off scot-free, and they can't see the person for who they really are because of the mask that they put on. They have matured into a higher or more advanced level of that. Does this make sense?
Kinda. I was going to ask you, do you, I don't know if I would equate toxicity to a maturity.
Okay.
However, I do agree that can be the case. I have a sliding scale in my brain now every time I close my eyes. It's like one of those old scales that you would hold and it would like eat. Yeah. Every time I close my eyes, that's what I'm seeing now. I don't think that that's the same thing, because I know a lot of very manipulative people who are very fucking smart. And because they're very smart and they know how to manipulate people, there is a maturity about them. They conduct themselves well in public. They're not laughing at fart jokes. Like, they are very mature people, but they are toxic, manipulative fucks because they're not healed. And because they have the intelligence they have, they're able to manipulate and do what they do.
Okay, so Right. Yeah, we're saying the same thing.
Okay.
That's what I mean by my scale.
Okay.
They're smart as fuck, but they're toxic. So they have matured, but they've matured into the negative.
Okay.
So they've matured the manipulation and the vindictiveness versus
right. It's into the
acceptance
positive.
and accountability.
Right.
And
I'm looking at a scale of 0 to negative 100 to
Yeah.
100, and I wasn't thinking in terms of negative maturity and positive maturity.
Right. Okay.
I'm like not mature and mature. So that
All
makes
right.
sense.
Okay.
Okay. So I was going to try to convince you that I'm right and you're wrong in all of this.
You know what? I have recognized that that's a thing in you. One of your toxic traits is that you do low key do a win-lose situation.
Sometimes.
I think it's all the time.
It's definitely not all the time. Every time we don't agree on something, I really pick it apart.
Why?
Because if we are not in agreement, there's an opportunity there for me to grow or you to grow.
Right.
And if I can figure out who's right, if it's you, then I need to like really analyze what you said and try to
Right.
find my way to grow there, because if you're right and I'm wrong, I have room for improvement. And if it's the other way around, there's room for improvement. Sometimes there's not a right or wrong.
Okay.
Sometimes it really is subjective opinion,
Yeah.
and this is an opinion thing. But I'm also now very hung up on the fact, am I not compassionate or empathetic because I've become calloused? Or am I being selfish by looking out for me and not willing to tolerate that behavior? There's a whole lot of what ifs, and how do I approach
Okay.
this about my character?
Well, now I'm going to offer you a new perspective. And this is going to be an extreme, if somebody shoots their mugger, that's self-preservation.
Right.
We're not going to demonize that person.
I mean, well, a lot of people would. You value your things more than that person's life. Yeah, I fucking do.
Right. This person put a gun to my head.
Right.
And we had a tussle, and it was my life or their life.
Right.
Someone would really fucking demonize that?
Oh, yeah. They say it all the time. You don't ever hear that conversation about people breaking into people's house and you would kill them. You value your items more than you value that
Yes.
person's life. Yeah.
Yes.
I value my shit. I got it. It's mine. I value my children and my wife. Like,
If you're willing to break into my house and vandalize my property, you're willing to vandalize me.
right.
That's how I view that situation.
that
It's not my things are an extension of me.
Right.
Play that game.
There's also a fear of the unknown. We don't know if you're just coming in to rob or you're coming in to do the other R
Yeah.
or kill. Right. So like, that's not the discussion though, but I understand where you're going with that.
Right.
Yes, there is a self-preservation there.
So that's how I would view that. I do not believe that we as humans are born calloused, lacking empathy. That is something that is taught, trained, and learned, adapted over time. Whether it be survival, whatever. And I believe that it happens because of hurt. Even people diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder, that disorder develops because of hurt in childhood.
Right.
And I can't remember where I was going with that.
That was a very good point though.
What was I saying?
I'm now hung up on that, but you were saying,
Right, I'm hung up on it too.
yeah, you were saying that, that nobody is born.
Oh yeah, nobody's born calloused.
Right.
Right. So when you're a dick, I view that as self-preservation. If I see a 70-year-old man and he goes, I hate life, fuck all of these nurses, I don't want to be here anymore. There's a reason. He wasn't 5 years old feeling that way.
Right.
Right.
Lived experience.
Exactly. And I do view that as a survival mechanism.
Do you think that justifies the behavior?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. Okay. Do you... million miles a minute. We stain furniture, right? If I want a table to be a very dark red, I'm going to stain it multiple times to get to the level that I want it to be. And then if I want to remove that stain, it's going to be a process to get that stain out and get that wood as close as I can to its original state. That's how I view life experiences. Some life experiences, we love how that stain looks and we're going to leave it like that. And maybe after 10 years, the stain's worn a little bit and we want to change it up. Doesn't mean that stain is bad or it's terrible or it's ugly. It means life has gone on. There's some wear, tear, and damage. Now we're going to change it up a little bit. trauma can also be a stain. And you get to decide on whether or not that stain is going to stay there.
Okay. Good analogy. I agree with that. Metaphor.
Did all that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
So how do you overcome that then? Because that's what I wrote down. How do you heal from that and open up? If you are that person who is walking away from conversations or hanging the phone up or being toxic, belligerent, and you are okay with that behavior because you've become callous or whatever, or you have trauma and you allow your trauma to dictate your emotional behavior.
Right.
How do you correct that? How do you start to correct that behavior?
Become self-aware.
How?
I always felt like a piece of shit after I blew up on somebody. Or I took something super personal, I blew it out of proportion, there was a massive argument for 6 hours, and now the relationship doesn't feel the same. I knew I did wrong.
Do you think that everybody feels that way when they're going through what they're going through with that behavior?
Not all the time.
Because I believe that people who do that intentionally to manipulate or to win.
I agree with that. There were times where I thought that I was justified, and I fully, like, looking back, my behavior is inexcusable. I don't care if I was right in the argument or not. There were a couple of times where my stance was correct, right? The way that I argued it was not. Does that make sense?
Is this doing the right thing for the wrong, or doing the wrong thing for the right reasons?
No. So, for example, say that I got into an argument with an ex-boyfriend because there has been a history of, I'm going to be home by 10 o'clock tonight, and then he shows up at 3 a.m.
Okay.
And it's a repetitive thing, and I've made it known, like, I worry, this, like, it gives me anxiety. I need you, if you're going to be home at a certain time, be home at that time.
Okay.
If you're not, give me a heads up, communicate with me.
Okay. So this is speaking on boundaries then.
Right. And then it happens again. And then I blow up, lose my mind. You're a fucking asshole. I can't fucking stand you. Pack your shit. Get out.
Okay.
You're just like your dad. Your mom was right. You're an asshole. All of these things. Like weaponizing emotion and vulnerability, all of that. So my stance was correct in holding up the boundary, and this is not okay. My argument, the way that I argued it, was not. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't remember where I was going. I gave an example. I created a whole scenario in my brain. Do you remember what I was saying?
I don't. We were talking about how you heal from it.
How do you heal from it? So you recognize you're the problem. Okay, so you reevaluate yourself. And
yeah, you said become self-aware.
Right. You become self-aware. So there were times where I knew that I was wrong after the argument happened. Like, there were times in the argument where I was like, damn, I was fucking wrong. But I'm this deep into it. I'm not gonna look like a bitch. Say that I was wrong, let you win this. No. And then there were times where I just explained that example where I believed that I was right in saying all of the things that I said because my stance was correct. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
That's where I was going with that.
At. Okay. That's exactly where we're, because I just had the same thought twice.
Okay. So it's recognizing whether you were right or you were wrong. For those of you listening, I'm doing quotations because right or wrong doesn't matter. Your behavior is either becoming or unbecoming of you. When I started recognizing that my behavior was unbecoming of me and that people were remembering me as that person, I was absolutely disgusted with my existence. I became self-aware and I threw up. It's crazy to reflect and look back and at my rock bottom. That's wild.
I'm going to change the subject in a second because I wrote something down, but I want to point out that a lot of people don't get to that point. That self-awareness, a lot of people, I guess this ties in, they don't want to be the problem.
No.
They want to view themselves as justified and not the issue because
then you're not the villain.
Right. Well, it's easier to throw the shade on other people than it is to change. And that's actually what I wrote down. I was like, winning equals I don't have to change.
Yes. Are you going to remember if I piggyback off of that?
Yeah, because I wrote it down.
So I'm going to piggyback off of that. If you are somebody who lives in the victim mindset and you are somebody who deems other people as villains, you will fight tooth and nail to not be deemed a villain.
Right.
Even if other people don't live that way, which can by extension carry on that toxic behavior of defending the wrong actions.
Yeah, I agree with that. It takes a lot for somebody to admit they were wrong, right? And what's crazy to me is when I know I'm wrong, I'm going to stop arguing immediately and be like, you're right.
Yeah, me too.
Like I totally I see what you're saying now. I did not see that shit before, because I would rather admit that right now than continue to dig myself further into a fucking pit of arguing my point just to argue my point. Like, I'm not going to grow if I can't admit I was wrong.
Right.
This is why we're having these conversations so much, because
Yeah.
I want to grow. Right. So that's normal. Go ahead.
I want to piggyback off of that. In digging that hole, I also don't want to change your perception of me.
What do you mean by that?
Because you have this perception of me as your wife as someone who goes above and beyond to be understanding and reflective on her actions and make sure she is not problematic. And if I just wanted to be right and I continued an argument, even though I was wrong, but I wanted to be right, and your perception of me changed, and I am no longer viewed as your wife, but this fraction version of your wife because I just created a 6-hour argument for no reason. That's terrifying to me. Then when that fractured version happens, that's when husbands start complaining about their wives to their coworkers.
Yeah.
Or start checking out other women when they're out and about at Walmart. When that perception changes and that illusion is shattered, yeah, I would rather be wrong than do that.
Well, you being wrong and admitting you're wrong means that it's not an illusion.
Okay. That's why I did the quotations.
Right, but it's important to recognize that, like, there's an authenticity and an honesty that comes. There's self-awareness aside, being able to be aware of really what's going on and giving people the authentic you means that they're going to see parts of you that are not flattering. You're going to see the bad days where I can't have a coherent thought for more than 30 seconds. Like, you're going to see the overstimulated. You're going to see me rip t-shirts off. Like, there's going to be parts of me that the world doesn't get to see that you get to see, because this is not an illusion. This is who I am, right? We understand each other in that aspect. And if you start faking it, you are now creating an illusion to the people around you to be that person, to make the other person the victim to them too, which creates cognitive biases. This is why we don't go and have conversations with people outside of the relationship about the relationship. On the winning means I don't have to change. Jordan B. Peterson, in one of the interviews I watched, said that winning, me being right, means that I don't have to do anything. Change is really hard. Growth is really hard. Healing is really hard. And if you're the one that's wrong, I don't have to do any of that, which is really fucking easy for me. So it'd be really convenient if you were wrong, right? You wrote you said self-reflection. Your self-awareness means that you reflect on yourself. And I had a thought, and I was going to interrupt you, and I'm getting really good at not doing that.
Thank you.
That there is a difference between self-reflection and conflict reflection.
Yes, there is.
The amount of people that will have an argument that will go back through the argument on the things that they could have said or what their person said and
pick it apart.
Pick it apart to try to make a better argument next time is very different than going, damn, I could have handled that better.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't have told her, well, I just will fucking never do that then.
I will pick apart my body language.
Right. But that is you reflecting on what you can change and what you can have control over versus trying to make me the enemy.
Right. Yep. I used to be that person too, would pick apart arguments so that way I was better prepared in the next argument to have more ammunition.
Yeah. Well, that's you're arguing to win at that point.
Right. That's exactly what that was. Yeah.
That's definitely not winning to understand, and it's certainly not winning for conflict resolution.
I gave myself a headache thinking about past me.
Yeah. That's funny.
I can't believe I was ever in a relationship.
Why is that?
Men, raise your standards. Because I was a mess. I was always combative. So I worked for a beverage company and I was a merchandiser for a while. And being a merchandiser, I did a lot of heavy lifting for 14 hours a day. During the holidays, 16, 18-hour days. And I was eating a lot of fast food. So I had muscle, but I was fat. At this point, I was over 300 pounds. And the person I was with at the time was recording something in the apartment. And him and I had an argument earlier that day. And I walked into the door and I was visibly postured for a fight when I walked through that door. And I remember seeing that video back then going, yeah, I look like a bad bitch. Like I look like I'm getting ready to fuck this guy up. And because that was my intention. And looking back, like seeing myself, because I was wearing my uniform. I had both sides of my head shaved. I was like balls deep in feminism, man. I would have like had ovaries in a jar in my kitchen. Feminism. And me looking back at that video now, I'm disgusted. Because I didn't look beautiful. I was not emanating grace and nurturing and caring. The argument happened at like 10 a.m. that day. I got off at 6 o'clock that night. And that whole day, I was just picking apart, because we were texting and arguing, of course. And I was picking apart the text messages, going, okay, well, how can I throw that back in his face? And I was just amping myself up, hyping myself up for this fight. And I walked in just that video of myself. I'm disgusted. And I can't remember where I was going with any of that. I was that person. I thrived in that chaos.
Well, that's where you were going. You were saying that you got a headache thinking about your old you. I want to point out that when we talk about high value people, when I think of a high value person, I think of somebody with an integrity and quality of character.
Yes.
Right. I honestly don't give a fuck about somebody's bank account. I don't really.
Got to be a person of your word.
It's so much more than that. Like, I don't want to be around scummy people. And if you're a toxic person and you live in that constant mindset, like, you are low value to me. And I think maybe that's why I'm able to write people off so quickly, because every friendship that I have is an asset. And I hope to God that I'm an asset to people. I hope that the enjoyment that I bring to the people's lives that I'm in makes me an asset to them in some way, because that's what friendships are. You're supposed to be loving and be there when they need somebody to move. And like, if there's a problem, you show the fuck up. Like, you're an asset. And when you look at it like that, it does cheapen kind of, but I want that. I want to be an asset to the people that care about me. I don't want them to look at me as a burden ever.
Or filler.
Oh yeah. I would hate to be that. I would hate to be that friend that's left out of group chats and like never invited anywhere.
Or you're only invited because you're fun when you're drunk.
Right. Or because somebody else is invited and I'm going to go if they go kind of thing. Right. But I do put an emphasis on the quality of character. And I think that people who are toxic and have not healed, though they may not be low value, they could be great people. They're just not, and they're not allowed here. I think, like I said earlier, if you're
you got to be a certain level of vibration to be around us.
Right. If you're $1 million personality, a $10,000 character can't be here. Like I'm not going to allow myself to be siphoned, because it's just not healthy.
So you're like, this is formal attire. You can't wear basketball shorts. Yeah. There's a dress code here, guys.
There's definitely an expectation that has to be met. I also think that to a level, me holding people to my life at a standard benefits them.
Oh, I agree.
Because if they want to be here, they're going to thrive, to grow and be better.
We're going to rise to the occasion.
Right. And when people are not growing, they fall off. You see it all the time. We have people come around for a little while and then they disappear.
Yeah.
That happens. But the people that I've been friends with for years are always growing and evolving and doing more. I don't know. It's just a lot to think about. We're an hour and 20 in.
Okay.
You want to wrap it up? Call it a day?
Yeah, I want to go finish my food.
All right. Well, that being said, guys, remember that life is a choice.
So choose to be better.
My habitual thing is still there.
I know. I don't even remember what I say. I remember your phrasing now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Because I almost keep saying it?
Yeah. I'm like, no, babe, don't say that one. Say the other. But then I can't remember what you say is. I just remember my line is choose to be better.
I have to think about it every time.
Yeah.
We're going to have to just not switch this ever again.
Fuck.
Yeah, well, it works.
No, it does. Yeah.
I just have to remember life is a choice.
Yeah.
And then choose to be better.
Do we have a ghillie suit?
Like a sniper suit? For what?
To hide out there from the birds. I want to take some pictures after this.
I mean, we could absolutely make that happen. You know that we have a friend in life who was a military sniper. Hell yeah. So you could also just buy a ghillie suit online.
Oh, I got permission.
You're supposed to make those for the environment and the terrain that you're in. Hey, we'll see you guys on the next one, because that's...
Bye, guys.